Today is my custom when starting a sesshin, especially with others that I may not have met or known so well. I always like to start at the beginning. And the beginning in this case is the first collection of koans that are traditionally studied in the Rinzai lineage. They come from the Gateless Gate, or the Mumonkan. And the first koan, of course, is about Joshu, the dog, and Mu, and goes as follows. Koan, Joshu's Mu. A monk once asked Master Joshu, "Has the dog the Buddha nature or not?" Joshu said, "Mu." Mumon's commentary, who compiled the koans in this collection. In studying Zen, one must pass the barriers set up by ancient Zen masters. For the realization of incomparable satori, one has to cast away one's discriminating mind. Those who have not passed the barrier and have not cast away the discriminating mind are all phantoms haunting trees and plants. Now, tell me, what is the barrier of the Zen masters? It's just this Mu. It's known as the barrier of Zen, and it is also known as the gateless barrier of Zen. Those who have passed this gateless barrier will not only see Joshu clearly, but will go hand in hand with all the masters of the past, see them face to face. In fact, you will see with the same eye that they see with and hear with the same ear. Wouldn't it be wonderful? Don't you then want to pass this gateless barrier? Then concentrate yourself into this one syllable, Mu, with your 360 bones and 84,000 pores, making your whole body one great inquiry. Day and night work intently at it. Do not attempt nihilistic or dualistic interpretations with your rational consciousness. It's like having a red-hot iron ball bolted in your belly. You try to vomit it, but cannot. Cast away your illusory, discriminating knowledge and consciousness accumulated up to now, and keep on working day after day, night after night. After a while, in the readiness of time, all the oppositions, such as in and out and life and death, will naturally be identified and seen through. You will then be like a person struck dumb who has had a wonderful dream but knows it only personally within oneself. Suddenly, as you break through the gateless barrier, you will astonish heaven and shake the earth. It is as if you can snatch the great sword right out of the hand of General Kokan. You kill the Buddha if you meet him. You kill the ancient masters if you meet them. On the brink of life and death, you are utterly free, and in the 6 realms and the 4 modes of life you live with great joy, a genuine life in complete freedom. Now, how should one strive? With might and main work at this Mu, and be Mu. If you do not stop or waver in your striving, then, behold, when the Dharma candle is lighted, darkness is at once vanquished. Mumon's poem, The Dog, the Buddha nature, the truth already manifested in full. A moment of yes or no, this or that, lost are your body and soul. I think everyone was at the talk last night, yes? Right? All right.
I wasn't.
You weren't?
I wasn't.
All right. Well, I'll remind you and tell you for the first time that doing zazen is like taking your tailbone and planting it like a root in deep, rich, dark Mother Earth. Or it's like dropping a long keel into the deep ocean. And when we do this, we get past or beyond the surface waters of our ego identity, our thoughts, our feelings, our sensations, our attachments, our desires, all the hungry ghost realms, and we drop down into deep, dark, clear, still, cold, nurturing water, or deep down, moist, warm Mother Earth. Either metaphor works pretty well for me. And when we're connected to that depth, the depth of our own true nature, all of it's our true nature, but when we reach the depth of our true nature, we immediately feel restored and cleared, and all of our trials and tribulations and troubles either become so small that they, for a time being, are inconsequential, or they literally kind of dissolve and melt away. And when we are outside of our trials and tribulations or beyond our trials and tribulations, thoughts, feelings, and sensations, and hungry ghost realms, and we're in something so much more vast and deep, and we're feeling that deep, dark, clear, still water, then with the fear gone and the trials and tribulations gone, all that's left is this nurturing love. The earth itself is quite nurturing, and when we're connected to its depth, we'll feel the love. We'll feel nurtured, held, supported. Same thing for the metaphor of deep, dark, still water. Where the water becomes so dark and still and deep that there's no light at all, or the same thing true using the metaphor of the deep, dark earth, where there's no light at all, and you come to a sense of breath or width that has an infinite expanse and an infinite depth. It's like sitting on top or floating on top with our ego identity on top of an ocean that has no bottom. But as soon as you get to a depth where you can't see any further and you can't at all penetrate the source or the depth, because it's infinite, but you've already reached the complete darkness. That barrier, which we can't go any further, where we can't know anything because there's no light, and it's so dark and still that really nothing is moving. Nothing is moving and nothing is there, and there's no light. That syllable for we've gotten as deep as we can go, and we still sense that it goes deeper still. When we've gotten as deep as we can go, that's mu. That's mu. When we feel supported, nurtured, restored by the vastness of mu, which has no bottom, that's mu. So when Joshu says, really, it all comes down to concentrating on this mu, he's completely right. He's giving us this great hint. He just says, hey, when you're sitting, or when you're chanting, or when you're doing kinin, or when you're doing samu, work meditation, be in touch with your own depth, and you will feel nurtured, cleansed, supported, and cleared by the very vastness itself. And so he says, go to this depth, go to the place of no knowing or beyond which we can't know, and allow going to that depth to restore, sustain, and nurture us. We're bound to be happier, clearer, more spontaneous, more creative, more loving in our response to the world when we are connected to our own depths. Of course, we're always connected, so what I'm talking about is being aware of that depth, aware of that depth. It's always there. It's nothing to attain, but we're not always aware of it. And Zen practice begins really with becoming aware of this infinite depth beyond light, beyond motion, but that is totally sustaining and nurturing and cleansing. And that totally sustaining, nurturing, and cleansing beyond light and beyond form and beyond motion is he gives great instruction about it. He says, how do we approach it? How do you want to get past this gateless barrier? It's gateless because is there any barrier between the surface water and the deep water? There's no barrier at all. The only barrier is one of our attachment of our ego identity, or even attachment to our suffering, or attachment to our wants, or attachment to our goals, or attachment to our ideals, or attachments to people, or places, or things, or rank, or position. Our attachment holds us at the surface waters. Our attachment is the barrier. Well, since it's our attachment, it's really no barrier at all. If we can sink down into the depths of our own true nature through Zazen, letting go, letting be, and releasing our own attachments to life even, then we'll settle into our own deep waters and be nurtured and restored and be able to live what brief life we have with more equanimity, that is to say, peace of mind, and a kind of powerful clarity, and not even so much clarity as peace of mind. And because I'm not clear about what the depth is at all. I have no such clarity. It's not knowable, but I don't need to know. I'm cleansed, nurtured, supported by that vastness, beyond boundless vastness, beyond motion, beyond time, beyond substance. And so I don't need to know what it is. I can't know what it is, but I can feel it or be aware of it, that I'm nurtured and supported and sustained. But I have to get past my attachment. It's weird, we could say, get past my attachment to my own suffering. And the biggest suffering of all is that my attachment to my ego identity, my sense of a separated selfhood. I constantly, and so does everybody else, get caught by our attachment to our sense of a separated personality, in which case our sense of a separated personality can feel offended, or can feel lacking, or can have this great desire to get ahead. And from that limited perspective of our egoistic or corporeal perspective, our attachment to our own corporeal perspective is what prevents us from being aware of our own depth. Well, how do we get to this depth? He says, don't you want to pass your own artificial barrier? Then concentrate yourself into this mu. Just keep your mind's eye pointed at the infinite, vast, boundless depths. With your 360 bones and 84,000 pores, that means your whole body, making your whole body one great inquiry. In other words, inviting an aware connection or communion with deep Mother Earth. If I have that intention of having a deep awareness or communion with Mother Earth, I will be restored. I just have to keep that intention up of I'm communing with Mother Earth, or I'm communing with the depths beyond depth in the ocean, floating on top of the ocean still, but still infinitely feeling connected and seamless with bottomless depth. This is my intention with my whole body. I'm inviting that communion with my whole body. Inviting that sense of communion with my whole body. It's not something I actually have to attain, but when I realize that communion, I'm completely restored. Indeed, in Sesshin, it's like all day and all night we work intently at it, and we often get trapped with our own egoistic views about the absolute, or about the relative, about life or about death, and we get trapped in our own dualistic thinking. But and to get rid of our own dualistic thinking is like having a red-hot iron ball stuck in your belly. You try to vomit it and you can't. We're so conditioned to figure things out and to see things as black and white, right and wrong, life and death, up and down, enlightened and crazy. You name all these possible dualities. We're so conditioned to be stuck in our conceptualizations of and dualistic thinking that trying to get rid of it is like trying to get vomit out a red-hot iron ball. It's difficult to let go of our conceptualizations, idealizations, attachments, and dualistic thinking. It's just hard to vomit that out because we're so conditioned to do it. But with this intention of being just simply relaxing and being in communion with deep, infinitely deep Mother Earth, infinitely deep ocean of the Dharma, we can release our dualistic thinking, at least temporarily, release our attachments, at least temporarily, release our clinging to our own personal sense of egoistic identity that is so worried about pain and fatigue and suffering and getting ahead or falling behind or having enough or what rank or position, or am I doing it right or am I doing it wrong? Oh, such burdensome thinking that we do. A monk asked, does a dog have a Buddha nature? Well, anybody who's met a dog knows a dog has a Buddha nature. This is a kind of silly question. So perhaps the monk was talking about a wounded dog that's got cancer and is on the verge of death and in great pain and great suffering. Does that dog have Buddha nature? We know that our life is temporary and that we can't avoid old age, sickness, and death. And so what the monk's really asking is, in old age, sickness, and death, when we have cancer and we're miserable or we're caught in our own attachments about life and death or about getting ahead or having enough or in our own vilification of ourselves, shame, or idealization of ourselves, self-aggrandizement, when we're caught in any of that, is that too Buddha nature? That's kind of a great question. Is that too Buddha nature? And Joshu, without trying to explain anything, just said, no. It's all mu. Mu is that character about that points at this infinite depth. But it's all an ocean of mu to begin with. That means all the surface water is also mu. Even our attachment to our egoistic, narrow egoistic perception is mu. Our crying and wailing about this, that, or the other thing about our shame or our what power we have or we don't have, or what rank we have or we don't have, or what position we have or we don't have, all that crying is also mu. All those hungry ghosts are also mu. Mu, 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 mu. It's all one ocean. It's all one earth. Myriad manifestations up here on top. But it's just one earth, one ocean, one reality, and it's all mu. So Joshu, when the monk asks about this dog who's suffering greatly on the verge of death, and in great suffering, and realizing that we ourselves will from time to time face great suffering and certainly death, is asking about that suffering and is whether or not that's also Buddha nature. Joshu points at the depths, says, don't worry about it. Get in touch with the depths. Get in touch with mu, and you'll realize it's all mu to begin with. Get in touch with mu, and you'll realize it's all mu. Nothing is excluded. Nothing is excluded. All we need to do is cast away our discriminating, illusory consciousness accumulated up to now and keep on working harder until we feel this deep communion. In this deep communion, we immediately realize the whole ocean, the whole of reality, all of it is already mu. From such a position, it's easy to kill the Buddha or kill the ancestors or grab the sword right out of General Khan's hand, because we have no fear and we have no need for the Buddha or the ancestors to even point the way, because we're communing with all of reality. From this place of communing with all of reality, the Buddha's already dead, the ancestors are already dead. And we can, without even a lot of courage, if necessary, just go and take the sword out of the hands of General Khan. On page 15, if you want to read with me, you can, of the offering to the hungry ghosts, in the middle of the page, it says, we offer to the hungry ghosts, about a third of the way down, we offer to the hungry ghosts as numerous as the sands of the Ganges. May they all be fully satisfied and abandon their greed. May they leave their abodes of darkness and be born into blissful paths of existence. Taking refuge in the three treasures, may they rouse the desire for complete awakening and finally come to the realization of it. May the merit thus attained continue forever. This is erroneous. It's either a poor translation, but I suspect it's really a kind of Pure Land Buddhist view of the world, that we're going to somehow convert hungry ghosts. Not going to happen. We can transcend hungry ghosts, and we can accept hungry ghosts, and we can embrace hungry ghosts, which is why we have to feed them and honor them. But we're never going to get rid of them other than saying they don't exist in the first place. In that sense, we get rid of them. But, for example, if I'm sitting here and all of a sudden my heart stopped, there would be this heart-stopped hungry ghost that would panic. Or if I couldn't breathe, my hungry ghost to breathe would really come up real fast. Or if I'm hungry, literally hungry, my tummy is hungry, I know exactly what my hungry ghost of wanting to eat is. And a lot of times, and I used to hate the truth of this, but it's just true. I've come to accept it. A lot of times I make the spaciousness and I'm going deep into mood, and what comes up is my hungry ghost of sexual desire. It's like, oh, leave me alone. I was just finding some peace. And I'm never going to get rid of this hungry ghost as an incorporeal being on the surface here of this water that wants to breathe, that wants to eat, that wants to have sex, that wants to get ahead, that wants to not be in shame, that wants not to suffer, that wants to have more, certainly wants to have enough, and then wants to have more, and wants to have rank and position, status, possessions, love. I've got so many hungry ghosts, and so do the rest of us, and they're never going to outgrow it. We're never going to outgrow them. Which is why we have to give this chant every day to them. Why do we have to give it every day to them? Because they're always there. They're always with us. Why do we give something to the hungry ghost every meal? Because they're always with us. We're not going to convert them or ourselves. We have to learn how to live with them, which this chant is about, how to learn how to live with them. To live with those surface aspects of our corporeal being, which is hungry for this, that, or the other thing. Hungry for love, or hungry for escape from suffering, or hungry to breathe, or hungry to eat, or hungry to have sexual relations, or hungry for something. Rank, position. If we think that we're going to convert them and bring them into Buddhahood, the only way we can do that is by touching the depth and not being just hungry ghosts. So often when we're limited to our own narrow egoistic perspective, we're stuck at that surface water. Those hungry ghosts are pretty dang prominent in those first few milliliters of water. They're very prominent. But if we go to the depth and we get to the place of where we can't go any deeper because we've gotten completely still, completely quiet, completely dark, and a vast that has no bottom, when we get to that kind of vastness, well, then the hungry ghosts are in a way all enlightened because they're completely dwarfed and seamless in communion with the vast ocean of reality. And in that sense, they disappear. And when we're in touch with that depth, we're not bothered by them at all. At all. Not in the least. When we're in touch with that depth. Am I in touch with that depth all the time? No. Will you be? Sorry, no. But we can touch the depth from time to time and get skillful at being restored by that depth time after time. Then we can accept and learn to live with our hungry ghosts, and that level of reality. It's a level of reality. It's an aspect of reality. It's some dimension that we name as hungry ghost reality. I can live with that dimension or named layer of reality when it's seamless with all the rest of reality. When it's seamless with all the rest of reality, it has no longer any importance. And in a way, in that sense, they're now all enlightened and blissful and converted. But there's a little kid inside who is always going to be a little kid. And there's a teenager inside who's always going to be a teenager, and an infant inside that's always going to be an infant, and a grumpy old man who's always going to be a grumpy or dirty old man. It's always in there. So the vastness, though, can hold it all, and in a way that will not harm others, or at least not harm others very much, not harm me very much, not harm others very much. That's a good deal. That's a good deal. That's where I practice anyway, is so that I will not burden others with my own hungry ghosts. But if I think that I am enlightened and I've converted all my hungry ghosts, I'm fooling myself, and I will end up intruding on others with my own hungry ghosts to feed my own hungry ghosts, because I'm not feeding them to myself with the depth of reality. I can feed and satisfy all my hungry ghosts if I'm in touch with my own depth, your own depth. You can feed and nurture your own hungry ghosts so that they're not troubling to you and they don't harm others. And because in that depth you also feel the natural nurturing and love, we become more loving and compassionate in the world, not based on fear. Switch from being fear-based to love-based. Only when we're in touch with our own natural depth, or have an aware communion of our own natural depth. Nothing to attain, no one to convert, and we're not getting rid of the surface water. You can't skim off the surface water, it's still there. You think you could skim off the surface of the ocean? You can't skim it off. It doesn't matter how you do it. You can't skim it off. That, what we call hungry ghosts, will always be with us, which is why we chant every day and make offerings every day. Okay, let's go to the 4 great vows. This English translation. Page 24. One of the reasons why I have trouble with English translations, because I've never found an English translation that really works. And they're all flawed because they put, words themselves are so dualistic, it's just almost impossible to escape it. They're so full of concepts, words being concepts themselves. So I'm not blaming the translation. It's just really nearly impossible to put anything into words appropriately that doesn't get stuck on concepts. Anyway, all beings without number, I vow to liberate endless blind passions. Well, first of all, on one level, on the relative level, you can say there are all beings without number. From the absolute level, there are no beings at all. Therefore, there's no one and nothing to liberate. I mean, if it's all one ocean, and even the hungry ghost realm is just part of one ocean, so sure, every molecule or atom or subatomic particle of the ocean you could say is beings without number, but why? Why bother? It's all one big ocean of nothing. So there is nothing to liberate. So then what then becomes of our great vow? To end blindness passion. Am I going to end blindness, blind passions? No. All those blind passions are going to be with us forever as corporeal beings, and it's perfectly natural part of the surface part of reality. However, when I'm in touch with my depths, your depths, when you're in touch with your depths, all the blind passions are so dwarfed by the infinite vastness. And in that sense, they're completely, there's an end to them, and all beings are liberated as soon as we're in touch with our vastness. So my great vow is to regularly be aware of this infinite vastness, to point myself at Mu, which is just the surface as far as I can go about knowing, and then there's no knowing. Mu is right there at that barrier, artificial barrier. It's an infinite depth beyond that, but I can't go any deeper with my understanding or conceptualizations. But I can be aware that there's this infinite depth. I can feel this infinite depth, and in that infinite depth, there are no beings and no beings to liberate. So the great vow really comes down to having a caring, open heart. And you're in touch with that depth. You naturally have a caring, open heart. And your interactions with all so-called beings will be loving rather than fear-based. And that's our great vow, to be in touch with that depth and to be loving rather than fear-based. But in truth, there are no beings without number. There is therefore nothing to liberate. The endless blind passions will be with us always, but when they're so drowned in the vastness, they disappear. Endless blind passions. I want them. Let them come, endless blind passions. I'll digest them all with the depth of communion with Mu. Dharma gates without measure. I vow to penetrate them. I don't want to penetrate them. I want to learn from them. Every molecule, subatomic particle is my teacher. Light is my teacher. Mother Earth is my teacher. Everything that Mother Earth nurtures and supports is my teacher. I don't need to penetrate it. I want to learn from all of reality. The great way of Buddha I vow to attain, and yet the Heart Sutra says there's nothing to attain, nothing to attain, nothing to attain. You should never see this in Zen. I vow to attain. The great way of Buddha is to be in touch with this depth and live an open-hearted, loving life, not love-based rather than fear-based. So I vow to manifest a love-filled life. I vow to manifest a love-filled life rather than attain anything. I just vow to manifest a love-filled life. It's so easy, even when we're dealing with Buddhism, which is the finest philosophy that I've ever come across, it's still so laden with all these conceptualizations and realms and aspects and beings and Buddhas. And there are, in reality, when we're in touch with our depth, we're just no longer stuck on all these conceptualizations. The fear just disappears, and all that remains is the supportive, still, quiet power, a nurturing vibration of love. And to the extent that I can bring that off the cushion is the extent that I have matured in the way. It's all about touching that depth, but that's just the beginning, because touching that depth is very restorative. Touching the depth of Mu is very restorative, allowing myself to be nurtured or aware of that depth, it's very restorative, but it's only the beginning. The true test is whether or not I can bring it off this cushion into walking, into washing dishes, into sweeping the floor, and into loving one another. This is the test. And I fail at that test, but that's the flag I'm planting in front of me, is to continually touch the steps and bring it forward into my daily, ordinary life. And that's manifesting the Buddha way. Before we go, it's, in my tradition, that's something that I would like to for us to continue. Even though English translation is difficult, if we could sit down and chant the 4 great vows, that would be good. Because what's the point of Teisho unless we come back to our great vow to have a caring, open heart in all circumstances, in front of all people, and supported by our willingness to accept our passions and our hungry ghosts and nurture and dissolve them with the vastness, to allow everything to be our teacher, even the circumstances that we don't like, and to manifest this way of no fear and love in daily life. I want to say those vows again and again and again, especially at the end of a Teisho. Otherwise, what's the point?